I guess we can get started. So, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, everyone. And thank you for joining this amazing session focused on how to get started with ITOM Visibility. This is a live webinar. And yes, you see that we have a great supporting panel with me today. But for those of you that don't know me, my name is Gian Mario De Luigi, and I'm part of the amazing outbound product management team covering ITOM Visibility and Cloud Accelerate. Today with me, we have Derek Kitzman and Steve Emerson that are helping us in this session. So thank you both for joining. And we're going to get started. We have a lot of content, but thank you again for joining. We're going to see why ITOM Visibility, first of all. Why is it relevant? And then what is ITOM Visibility in terms of the features that it offers? And then next steps and learning resources. But again, the key important part for today is going to be perhaps the very first one. So why ITOM Visibility? So for those of you that are familiar, and I assume you're all familiar with the CMDB, that's your organization's data foundation, and it's the data foundation for ServiceNow. It's basically a central system of record, and it contains all the configuration data, and that's for all of your infrastructure and applications across your different environments, either on cloud, on-premise, etc. And we've seen that the most successful CMDBs have business awareness, have business context. That means that they can easily relate each of the CIs to their impact on the application services and broadly on the business. So having really visibility into your technology state and really understanding how that impacts your business is key. And a business aware CMDB enables all these different outcomes that we can see in this slide. Oftentimes we hear that there could be issues with the CMDB implementations, and sometimes they can even fail. And why do these implementations fail? There are many reasons for it, and we tried to synthesize them into this slide, but there are, of course, way more. And most of the times we see that there's not enough automation, and the data sources that are selected are not reliable. Then there are not clear goals that have been set by the organization before implementing the CMDB. So there's not a well thought of process on what needs to be put in there. Then there is either too much or too little data. And sometimes the critical data is not even in there. And or sometimes the critical data, what should be the critical data, is not actually accurate. And when there's lack of trust in the CMDB, that really compromises the overall project. There are also a lot of customizations that can happen in the CMDB for very specific reasons, and that's not done while considering the overall impact of these customizations, and that really can affect negatively your CMDB experience or any implementation. There's also the lack of tying your data in the CMDB to processes like change, asset, and release management, or there's also lack of formality in the implementation and governance of the CMDB. These are just few of the reasons for the fail of a CMDB implementation. And that's, as I said before, that's the key, right? And one of the reasons that we saw there is that there is lack of automation. There's a lot of manual inputs in order to populate the CMDB. And that is not correct. As a matter of fact, automation of that population process is really critical to a successful implementation of the CMDB. And that leads, specifically, if it's not implemented correctly, you'll have duplicate data or misclassified, unclassified, or even incomplete data. And as you can see here, we've noticed then when people are performing work from information that is either not clear or not concise or not valid, the organization will end up spending 40% of the resources on the corrective action. So again, automation is key, and as we'll see more in the coming slides, having a clear direction as well is really important. Let's see now the ITOM visibility overview, now that we understood why ITOM visibility is key. With ITOM visibility, we've seen the importance of having, again, the business-aware CMDB and how it needs to be well implemented. Well, with ITOM visibility, you can achieve that business awareness of your data foundation with all these components that you can see here. This is exactly what you will be entitled when buying ITOM visibility, and most of you will be entitled to all these features. And we're gonna cover each one of them today. Now, one thing that I wanted to take a look at is that if you go to the store, that's where most of the innovation has been released with ServiceNow and with ITOM visibility. You can see, and we're going to cite a lot of these store applications, but we can't enforce how important it is for you to keep checking the store and our What's New sessions clearly, but primarily the store, where you'll be able to see all of the great innovations that are being released constantly every quarter. Now, for visibility, the key pillar of visibility is to have a well set up discovery at the very beginning. So as we said before, you need to gain visibility into all of your environments, whether they are on-prem or cloud, public cloud, whatever they are, right? And you need to have visibility on all of your data sources, on all of your servers, microservices, whatever you have on those environments. And you need to properly populate your CMDB with the accurate data. So the outcome will be for you to have all the data that you need, and we provide you with the interface and the tools in order to visualize that data properly and act on it as you should be doing. So we launched recently the Discovery Admin Workspace, and this is a tremendous innovation for discovery admins. And we have dedicated webinars that are being hosted, and there are dedicated resources that you can find online. But essentially, for all the discovery admins, there's a new dedicated workspace from where they can schedule new discovery schedules. They can analyze what's going on in their existing discovery schedules. What are the errors? They can meaningfully intervene on those errors by creating tasks. They have all sorts of tools in order to perfect that discovery and fine-tune it with the tuning advisor, so they can act on the insights that they get out of discovery to get better at it over time. This is a really, really powerful tool. So having a well-populated CMDB is possible, and with Discovery Admin Workspace will be also easy. Now, discovery follows the following phases. At a high level, you need to, first of all, scan your network. So Discovery will send a probe called the Shazam probe that you may be familiar with to the network to see if the commonly used ports are open and if these ports can respond to the queries. For example, the Shazam will find a device that is responding on the port 135 with WMI probe, as we can see here. And Discovery knows that that will be a Windows server. The next phase will be the classification phase. If Discovery finds devices or computers, we'll send additional probes to find the type of device or the operating system on that very same device. As an example, we can see that the operating system here is the Windows 2016 data center with this specific version. Then the Discovery will use the records called classifiers, which will specify the trigger probe or probes that run during the next two phases. If you're using patterns, the classifiers will specify a trigger probe that in turn will launch a pattern. And that's the next phase. The next phase is identification. So Discovery at this point needs to gather more information about the device and tries to determine whether that's an existing CI in the CMDB. Discovery, at this point, will run additional probes and sensors and identifiers to update the existing CIs in the CMDB or to create new ones. Identifiers are, of course, also known as identification rules, will then specify the attributes that the probes look at when reconciling data with the CIs in the CMDB. So if you're using patterns, Discovery uses the appropriate identification rule for the CI type specified in that very same pattern. And then we have the last phase. We can see here the interactive graph is basically populating all the data that, realistically speaking, will be found out with all the different probes and sensors that are being used by Discovery. And in this very last exploration phase, we have that the identifier is launching even additional probes that are configured in the classifier. And these probes are especially designed as exploration probes to gather additional information about the device, such as the application running on it and additional attributes such as memory, network cards, and drivers. Discovery is then creating that very same relationship that is happening between applications and devices and between applications. So if you're using patterns, the operations in the pattern perform the exploration of that very same CI. And as you can see here, we collected all the data, we have built all the different relationships, and this has all happened thanks to Discovery. So it is now possible to achieve file evidence for software audits with file-based discovery. That means that for very specific use cases, I'm thinking about Log4j or many other specific needs of the company, really, where file-based discovery needs to be performed. This can be adopted so that you can get the right evidence for specific files so you can achieve the different outcomes in your enterprise. Now, let's talk about cloud visibility. And this is a concept that really resonates with what we've seen before for the CMDB implementation, but also needs to resonate on the reasons why we are triggering Discovery and why we're using Discovery in first case. So there are different reasons why your companies will be leveraging cloud visibility and cloud discovery. And some of the use cases could be because of compliance. That's an industry-specific requirement. You need to know exactly. I'm talking about PCI, PII data inside some of your devices, or any other regulatory and compliance needs that you may have for your specific industry. It could be for the governance of your cloud resources, or it could be for FinOps use cases for cloud cost management, or security operations, so security incident response, or software asset management. There are so many other use cases that are not even represented in this slide, but whatever they are, you need to really sit down with your teams and really make sure that they are all aware of what are the needs from each single actor, so you know exactly why you need to discover your environment. That is paramount. And now that I see that many of you have joined, I actually want to launch the first poll for today. And the first poll is to really understand what you are doing right now with ITOM Visibility. Are you actually starting to implement it, or have you already thought about it, but you have not started yet, or you are just refining your implementation so you are advanced, or you already mastered it, perhaps? We just want to better understand what is your current situation, so please select the use case that is the most accurate for you. And in the meantime, please just keep answering this poll so that we can have a good representation of your current use case. Now that we decided on what are the main use cases for which we would like to leverage cloud discovery, there are two different layers of cloud discovery. The first one is the metadata discovery, where we are basically going to investigate which resources are there in our cloud environments. And we're talking about all the availability zones, data centers, all the way up the virtual machines, the relationships that these resources have, and their attacks. And that is called via the Meet server through a REST API call. Whereas the OS level discovery is something to discover what's sitting on top of the virtualized layer. So what are the different servers, databases, web servers, load balancers, all the way up to eventually your business services, everything that is sitting again on top of your virtual machine instances. And we'll see a little bit more of what these two entail, starting from the very first phase. And thank you all, by the way, for answering that poll. If we look at the metadata in cloud topology discovery, this can be done, first of all, across the infrastructure as service, platform as service, and function as service, or even container as service across these different cloud providers that we see here. And we do have the possibility to discover, yes, the metadata, the tags, but also Kubernetes and containers. And potentially, whenever event-driven discovery is turned on, all the live configuration changes that happen within those environments. Alternatively, on top of the traditional cloud discovery, we can even use the AWS, Azure, or Google Cloud Service Graph connectors in order to discover these environments. However, we need to be very mindful of what are our use cases. Because yes, then if we want to do OS level discovery, the choice of the discovery method that we are going to go for the first step is going to impact the ability of discovering further aspects of our cloud environment, specifically the OS level, at the OS level discovery, basically. This means that we have basically three main approaches. And these are either the agentless or agent-based discovery or cloud service graph connectors. Starting from the agentless horizontal discovery, that's typically the most complete approach that we currently offer, because it offers the possibility to basically cover enterprise, software asset management, Oracle Glass use cases, certificate management, file-based discovery. It offers the possibility to access actually works if we have access to OS credentials, and it needs firewall access to the mid servers. And it also offers the opportunity, of course, to have top-down and ML-based service mapping, and service mapping can be done for hybrid services. This is the most complete approach, but again, we need OS and application credentials, which is, as you may know, not that trivial to get. So the other approach, in case you have the system account, local service account, or Microsoft GMSA permissions, in that case, you'll be able to use the agent-based discovery. So install the agent client collector for visibility in your cloud environments, and you'll be able to get most of the use cases that we mentioned before, except from the file-based discovery and certificate management use cases. In case you don't want to maintain a mid server and you want a completely midless approach, and you just have read access to your cloud provider system of record, then you can still leverage the service graph connectors, the cloud service graph connectors. However, you'll be able to cover more basic scenarios. We're talking about basic software asset management use cases with the data that is coming from the package manager, or the service maps, in particular the ML-based service mapping. And this will be, again, just limiting for all the other use cases that are not covered by this approach. So again, yes, it's an architectural decision, but especially it's an outcome decision. Because when you're setting up these systems, you need to make sure that you got all the use cases covered. And of course, keep in mind that all these technologies, these approaches, I would say, are constantly being updated. So we're offering more and more in that case. We also have recently introduced the Bring Your Own License support for cloud discovery, which can identify the service and applications where Bring Your Own License is applicable. And then this data will be in turn be used by software asset management use cases. Again, we're always going back, though, to the use cases that we want to cover. Now, we talked about discovering traditional cloud environments. What about the cloud native environments? Kubernetes discovery. As you can see, we have 4 different approaches that vary based on the use cases that you want to cover for the discovery of your containerized environments. However, a recommended approach relies in either leveraging the cloud native operations for visibility or service graph connector for OpenTelemetry for those of you that are leveraging OpenTelemetry. Let's now dig into the CNO for visibility. This is basically relying on the installation of a Kubernetes informer instead of your Kubernetes cluster. So each Kubernetes cluster will have one informer installed, and that will be managed pretty much as a sort of agent, sort of the same way that the agent client collector is installed and managed. In this case, actually, you'll be able to update the informer and act on it directly from the ServiceNow instance with the latest innovations that we have introduced. What will happen is that the informer will subscribe for the events to the API server inside the Kubernetes cluster. We'll send the events to the queue, and then we'll have the sender that will be picking up events and posting them into the ECC queue. So this allows to have a constant, continuous discovery of this environment. So you will have both approaches with CNO. The continuous discovery, which is only updating what's changing in between time intervals from a configuration standpoint inside the Kubernetes cluster, and the traditional discovery schedules that can run on a specific basis, let's say once a day. So it's a very, very complete approach to discover your cloud native environments. Now, for those of you that want to also discover the software that is installed inside containers or get a software bill of materials inside containers, this is also possible. Specifically, we leverage an integration with the Aquatree tool that is basically scanning the container image OS package and is creating the software installations and the SBOM that will be attached to a specific Kubernetes cluster. This allows to, again, enable more use cases, such as SAM use cases or even security use cases. That's why we always say, yes, we do offer a lot of these approaches and a lot of flexibility around them, but we need to have clear in mind what is the end game, what are the use cases. It is very important for you, if you're leveraging especially discovery, cloud discovery, to really keep your patterns up to date. We keep shipping new patterns very frequently, and you should always have a look at the visibility content and discovery and service mapping patterns to have the most updated patterns so that you can have the fullest visibility into your environments. Cloud Discovery Workspace is a centralized place that really makes it way easier for users that are discovering their cloud environments to have a clear view of what is residing in there. From the Cloud Discovery Workspace, you'll be able to not only schedule your different cloud discovery schedules and manage them, but also have a unified view of all the potential errors or the configurations, and really drill down into your cloud estate, also distinguishing between your on-prem and cloud installations, or let's say amount of resources, and then really have a unique view of what your cloud posture is from that perspective. Then we have the agent client collector. This is the agent-based discovery. Then the agent client collector is essentially a sort of revolution that was introduced a few releases back now, and is essentially intended to discover endpoints, especially whenever we have either zero trust, secure environments, or whenever we can't really get the necessary credential for those environments. The advantage of the agent client collector is that it really enables a lot of different outcomes. And it can be used for, in general, it's a different type of discovery, first of all, because it's a push-based discovery to populate the CMDB. And the different scenarios that are involved in this are as I just said, end user computing, which is demanding push-based and event-driven discovery, or IPv6 enabled compute, or challenges with obtaining credentials, as I just said. Let's say they have a DMZ environment and you need to discover it. The agent client collector will be your choice, or even auto-scaling resources in environments. Or even air-gap networks, right? If you have air-gap networks, you can still use the agent client collector and export your discovery logs and then filter out before you actually push them to your CMDB. So as you can see here, we can enable all sorts of use cases. The ITSM use case with ACC for investigation, AIOps with ACC for monitoring. We have the SAM use cases with software optimization, and SecOps use cases with security incident investigation and enrichment. So it's all about the outcomes that you want to achieve, and also, in this case, some of the architectural decisions. We recently announced the ability to execute patterns directly from the agent client collector. That means that all of your traditional discovery patterns can be launched directly from your agents by leveraging the existing connection between the agents and the made and in general the environment that you're already discovering. So that is a great advantage for all those use cases where you didn't have those credentials, but you still need to discover them. So this is also great because instead of trying with SSH and WinRM or PowerShell probes, you can just leverage the agent client collector. We also recently announced the ability to discover IPv6 devices. So for all those of you that need to be compliant with the OMB 2107 requirement, please make sure that you check this out. And yes, we're almost halfway through this presentation. I just want to make sure, Derek, are there any major questions so far?
Just one that I've answered so far.
Right. Thank you. So I guess we can keep going with the next big chapter, which is service mapping. A lot of you are definitely interested in service mapping because, as we said, it's great to have a clear vision of what your technology estate looks like. But if you can't relate that to the business impact that it can generate, it's a big challenge. So service mapping helps you exactly establish the connections between a specific specific piece of your infrastructure to then see how it relates to your application services. There are three main options for you to perform service mapping. The basic approach is once you're discovering your tags, you can do tag-based service mapping. And especially for cloud environments, this is really a recommended process because it offers quick time to value, and we'll see that in a minute. The other approach is ML-based service mapping, which is being just streamlined so much over the previous releases. And then we have the most traditional top-down service mapping for more business-critical needs. Let's now explore the top-down service mapping. Now, the biggest requirement is that for top-down service mapping, you need to define an entry point. That could be a URL that could be, connection parameters, etc. But you really need to define, and the administrator at that point will need to define an application service with an entry point for that application CI. And once the entry point has been defined, we have the host detection phase, where we have to establish that connection to that target machine and having the discovery of the CI information. So the device that is hosting the application needs to be identified in that case. We're discovering the details of that CI for the service mapping. Then we have the CI identification, where we need to really identify all the applications that are running at that stage on that discovered host based on the information that we got from the entry point. And then the magic happens. We need to establish the connections. And this is exactly the stage that happens at the end after the CI identification. So the connection discovery will allow you to really find the configured relations of each discovery CI by checking the outbound connections. In this case, we'll meaningfully connect all these different CIs within our technology estate to see, okay, how are these impacting my application service? So this is a very tedious process that involves a lot of time, a lot of resources spent on it, and it's done typically for mission critical application services. I just mentioned before that alternatively, this is a different type of service map, but it's still very useful. The tag-based service mapping is also crucial. Once you perform discovery, especially of your cloud environments, that's typically the best use case. And you do have your CIs with related tags. You can then, first of all, leverage tag governance that we'll discuss later to really unify and make sure that all these tags are properly adjusted to the company policy. So each CI has the right tagging, and then you can meaningfully create CI tag categories. That means that you group together tags based on same categories. And then you can group these categories with tag-based service families that will be eventually leveraged to create your service maps that will be then operationalized. So this means that in just a few meaningful groupings of your tags and in very basic adjustments of your CI tag categories and tags in general, you'll be able to get to new tags and new application to actually new service maps. And that's all that matters. This is done again primarily for cloud environments, even though it's a slightly different interpretation of the application service of the service maps, let's say. The best approach that we currently suggest in order for you to create service maps and in general application services is to leverage the ML-based service mapping. In order to do so, you will just need to collect running process and TCP traffic data. And ML clustering will be applied on them to create suggested services. And in a few clicks, you'll be able to generate new service maps. Now, the cool thing is that you can leverage data from any source. So regardless of the source that is put that data into the CMDB, we're talking about, again, running process and TCP data. After that data is on your CMDB and is relevant for the service mapping purposes, so it's been brought in with the traditional standards, I would say, you can meaningfully use ML-based clustering to create automated suggested services. And at that point, with, again, very few clicks, you can get to service maps. This is a breakthrough innovation. And just in the upcoming release, and this is going to happen in about a week. So safe harbor notice applies, but the plan is intended to be achieved and to be brought to completion. You also leverage the service fingerprints in order to basically get to service maps faster. How? We will ship service fingerprints that you can leverage to have automated service suggestions, and that's done via ML clustering. So this will basically allow you to have, whenever you have at least opted in on ITOM content service, to get to service maps easier and faster. So a lot of innovation is happening around service mapping. Now, certificate inventory management. This is a breakthrough innovation, I would say, because yes, many of our customers are using this feature, but we introduced so many new relevant innovations that it's just getting awesome. So we know that about 80% of the companies that were interviewed in a recent study have admitted that they had at least one outage that was caused by an expiring certificate over the past year. And certificate inventory management is here to just avoid that happens, basically. It all starts by discovering your certificates across your entire state, either by port-based or CI-based or URL-based or even key store-based. You can see the details here. We support different certificate authorities for discovery purposes, such as DigiCert, Entrust, GoDaddy, Sectigo, Microsoft, AWS, Azure, and Google. But in terms of certificate fulfillment, we support any CA that actually leverages the ACME standard. So that's a great innovation that we recently released. And for CA automation support, we have the support via API for DigiCert, Entrust, and Microsoft. We can now also discover all the certificates within Windows and Java key stores. Once we have the discovery and then we are gaining business context of those certificates as we populate them in the CMDB, we can proactively create tasks to have a notification 60 days prior to the expiration. And then we can request the automated fulfillment in the Employee Center or Kubernetes Certificate Manager. And then we can automate the new or renew or revoke workflows to the certificate authorities. Now, at that stage, we'll create a change request to ensure governance, so we can track everything that is happening around this certificate lifecycle, and we can eventually visualize the certificate lifecycle in inventory. How can we do that? With a new workspace that allows you to perform all these tasks in a streamlined way, the certificate management workspace. We are about to introduce also the CSR generation directly from a ServiceNow instance. And this is just fresh off the press. This is, again, safe harbor notice, but the plan is to release it in a week's time on November 7th with the Q4 2024 store release. And this is going to be a breakthrough innovation again. So you will be finally able to generate that CSR request directly from ServiceNow. Firewall audits and reporting. We know that for all of the organizations out there, and very likely for you, managing firewall policies can be a problem. Oftentimes it's very manual or with out-of-date spreadsheets, and your IT and security teams are really lacking the confidence of firewall policies to be implemented correctly within the policy. Now, for those of you that are leveraging Palo Alto Panorama Firewall Manager, we offer the possibility to discover your firewalls and all the firewall policies, to audit those firewall policies, and to streamline the new firewall request with the automated change creation embedded into it. And we have, again, one single dashboard for it, because we are introducing, and we have recently introduced actually, the firewall administration workspace. So you can act on your firewalls and firewall policies in a streamlined way. So please make sure that you check your firewall audits and reporting store app. Tag governance. This is something that we just mentioned there. And tag governance is key if you really want to get to value and get to quick service mapping in an effective and meaningful way, especially when it comes to your cloud environments. But it's also good if you want to enforce policies and compliance across your cloud estates. We know that you'll be very likely leveraging different clouds that have different policies and different tags, and different accounts will be assigned to different BUs. So they will have different tagging standards. Well, tag governance is here to just make sure that you put governance to your tagging strategy across the board. It all starts by discovering tags across your cloud and on-prem environments, so you can automatically populate your CMDB. Then tag governance has the automatic auditing of these tags. And either we have the creation of a task so that a user can intervene on all the non-compliant tags, because again, with tag governance, you need to basically insert your tagging policies. And for all those resources that are not compliant, then there will be a user that will just be acting on a tag. But if you want to do things at scale, we offer the auto remediation opportunity, not only within the CMDB, but also in the cloud. And that's a breakthrough because you can automate remediation at scale. And at the same time, once they will be all fixed, you'll be able to achieve service mapping and gain business context of all of your tag resources. So this is the interface, and there are many resources even on YouTube and on our websites, as we're gonna share later on, but just make sure to check that tag governance. This is a great ITOM visibility feature. I just want to make sure that everyone understands we're just going through all these features that are amazing, but if you have ITOM visibility entitlements, these will all be included with ITOM visibility. So for all of you that have middleware or Oracle databases, and you've been asked by Oracle to audit your environments, we offer the possibility to leverage ServiceNow, in particular Discovery, for the Oracle licensing reviews. So ServiceNow is an authorized Oracle Glass partner. So as a matter of fact, we can audit your Oracle environments and export the verified installation and usage data in minutes instead of waiting for weeks. So you can automate this process or make it way faster. But not only that, we also have recently introduced the possibility to make data collection for Oracle Java audits. And this is actually going to be announced on November 7th. So safe harbor notice applies, but we just wanted to share this with you because the plan is to release it on November 7th, and this is going to be another breakthrough, especially after the new guidances that are being released by Oracle from a licensing perspective. Now, we have seen different ways that you can populate your CMDB with. But if you don't want to leverage the agent-based or agentless discovery, Service Graph connectors are here for you. And of course, you always need to consider the use cases that you want to cover. But we have so many different Service Graph connectors. This is not only cloud Service Graph connectors. We have more than 50 connectors to your existing system, so you can import the data into your ServiceNow instance. But when you're importing data from different sources, then you need to make sure that you have a CMDB that is reflecting the right data that you want to be reflected in. That is why we introduced the multi-source CMDB. Essentially, when you're discovering data with ITOM Discovery and you're at the same time leveraging Service Graph connectors, you will actually come up with a golden source. So at any given point in time for each CI, you'll be able to determine which source should be populating that CI. And that is a breakthrough because you can have a very reliable CMDB by still leveraging different sources of data. Last but not least, Cloud License Estimator. For all those of you that are interested in cloud discovery and maybe don't have the licenses for it yet, we are introducing, and we just launched in September, the Cloud License Estimator Innovation Lab release. This means that it's free of charge. You can test it out on your sub-prod environments. And it's basically an easy way for you to scan your cloud environments without needing a mid server, and to really get a count of all of the licensable resources. You get a breakdown of which resources in general, both licensable and not licensable, you have. It's as an example, for AWS, you're using AWS config. And then you'll be able to also get the SU count, an estimation of the SU count that you will need if you want to operate and if you want to manage those environments within ServiceNow. Now, we have about 10 minutes left. And before we wrap it up, Derek and Steve, are there any questions you would like me to cover?
Yeah, if we just kind of so far, Diego Justino is asking, will they have access to the PowerPoints after the end of the session?
Yeah, we'll talk to the team and we will double check with them. We'll try our best.
Okay.
I don't think there will be a problem either way.
Okay. And then let's see, someone asked, if we opt to use AWS Service Graph Connector, do we still need to use AWS Service Management Connector? Do they do the same thing?
The AWS Cloud Service Graph Connector, I guess, has a slightly different scope. Maybe Derek, sorry, you wanted to take this on.
Yeah, so, if we think about the goal of the AWS Service Graph Connector, it is to discover the metadata of the resources that are deployed under a cloud service account, a cloud account, right? And if you have AWS config enabled, we can also pull down a limited subset of OS details, like the OS version and the installed software on the IaaS, on that OS version. And that is really to help drive the software asset management workflow. As far as the AWS Service Management Connector, I'm not 100% familiar with all of the capabilities, but what I understand is it is a store application that kind of facilitates the request of those cloud resources. So I think they do different things. I would assume that the AWS Service Management Connector could potentially bring in CIs. And I think someone had stated that it's probably not leveraging the identification and reconciliation framework. Therefore, which Service Graph connectors and Cloud Discovery do. So there's always the potential that you could get duplicate records in the CMDB for the cloud resources. So I hope that answers the question. If not, please, add a follow-up.
Thank you, Derek.
Yeah, and then there was one other one, and Mobut's asking if you decide to use a conventional manual or dynamic method to build out your service maps, then switch to top-down discovery. Will top-down discovery then overwrite, update the existing mapped relationships, or possibly break them? Oof. There's a lot there.
Yeah.
It depends on whether or not you use the right relationships. I would assume that there will probably be some collisions and probably some new relationships created And I think, rather than trying to convert a map, I would almost opt for creating a new application service, and then entering in the endpoint and doing the top down. And then once you're ready to operationalize that map, write a script to migrate incident problem change request over to the new SysID for that. That way you maintain historical incident problem change records. You just update the relationship of that to the new SysID of the new map. That would be my desired approach. I think there are multiple answers there, and I'm not sure if I answered it, but I hope that makes sense.
Thank you, Derek.
Yeah.
I think this is the perfect time before we actually move to the final section. And please, everybody stay on, because we have great resources that are here for you. I would launch a poll to really test out what are your thoughts on this session. So do you feel like you got a little bit more clarity on what ITOM visibility is and what do you need to do when you're approaching the implementation phase with ITOM visibility? Nice. I see great feedback there. So please just...
Andy, good to see you, buddy.
Yeah, just please. And I love the great reactions there. And if you have any feedback, just please feel free to share it on the Q&A function. I will just keep this going and move to the next steps. There are a few call to actions that I would like to bring to your attention. First of all, please make sure that you transfer the importance of visibility to your broader organization so they can all see the value of having ITOM visibility and properly implemented. And about the learning resources that we're going to share with you, please make sure that you use them and that you really leverage them when in continuing your implementation journey. And then there are 5 steps for successfully deploying a healthy CMDB that we would like to share with you. Number 1, it's a very recurring theme today. Set your direction. Make sure that you absolutely know what you're going to do with your CMDB. The second one is going to be then you need a team to support you in this implementation journey. And you also need a governance model. You need to have organization-wide policies for your ITOM visibility implementation. Then you need to design your data model, your CMDB in general. What's your data model going to be like? What is your CSDM at the end of the day? And of course, trying to stick as much as possible to the latest and greatest CSDM version that we propose. Then you need to operationalize the CMDB and really create ongoing strategic alignments with every other stakeholder. Talking about security, we're talking about any other team that will benefit from a well-populated CMDB. And thank you all for your answers, by the way, to reply in that poll. But what we really want to highlight here is that setting direction, at the end of the day, operationalizing your CMDB with automatic population and really making sure that it's well thought of. These are key steps in your CMDB implementation, so eventually ITOM implementation. So before you actually go and discover anything, you need to ask yourself these questions. What do you want to accomplish? And again, use cases. How do you want to accomplish in terms of the sort of architectural decisions, right? There are different approaches that you can go for, but what are your favorites after having chosen the different use cases you would like to cover? And then the why. What are the outcomes that the CMDB will support? So you also need to measure, how do you know that you are on track. So you need to make sure that you ask yourself the right questions. Also, we talked about traditional discovery and also sort of service graph connectors. We always suggest you to start off with a traditional ServiceNow discovery, either agentless or agent-based, for the simple fact that all the ITOM visibility applications that you can see here are designed with configuration management natively. Whereas you can enrich for whenever it's not possible to discover those environments. You can also enrich your CMDB by leveraging the service graph connectors, although they have not been designed with configuration management natively in mind. So you should also think about that. But at the end of the day, you will still have one single data model, one platform, and one architecture. So one single source of truth, especially talking about the multi-source CMDB that we just mentioned there. We have only 2 minutes, but please make sure that you leverage all these resources. Number one, ServiceNow Creates. We have so many great resources here for you that will help you, especially in your ITOM implementation journey. So please make sure that you visit ServiceNow Creates. Another great resource for you is the ITOM Visibility Resource Library. So I don't know if Steve or Derek can paste this link, but this is a great resource, and we'll definitely share it with you. If you go to the ServiceNow community and type in ITOM Visibility Resource Library, you will see many great resources, blogs, videos, webinars, etc. that we've been working on. If you want an in-person experience, and thank you for sharing in the chat, by the way. If you want an in-person experience and you want to participate to our live in-person workshops, make sure to scan these QR codes and check which ones are coming up in close by to your city. Of course, the schedule for this year is almost over as we have a limited amount of workshops still available, but please make sure that you check them out, and same thing applies for AIOps workshops. So for each of the products, let's say pillars that we announced, we have dedicated in-person workshops. Then please make sure not only to enroll into the ITOM Visibility and Cloud Accelerate Academy by looking at the Live on ServiceNow link or QR code that you can easily scan here, where we have monthly recording series where we share best practices, we talk about new features, we have our great inbound product management folks that are presenting these products to you. So this is a great resource to have. And if you want to also have a better view of the past webinars that we previously hosted, please make sure that you scan this QR code, where you're going to have all the previous episodes that we recently hosted. Last but not least, there is a ton of content that will be shared with these slides. So we'll definitely make sure to circle back with the team and share these slides with you. That was it for today. We are at time. I thank you all for attending this session, for your great engagement. It has been amazing talking about ITOM visibility with you, and we know that you will do great in your next steps of implementation. I want to thank Steve and Derek for having helped out with the Q&A, and we're really looking forward to see you all soon in our next webinars. Thanks all, and see you soon.